And so I would like to once again welcome everybody to the AMATYC webinar series, and our topic today is teaching developmental mathematics. It's not just about the content, and Marianne and Lynn are our speakers today. The Developmental Math Committee is a sponsor of this webinar, and this is one of the core values of AMATYC to help instructors participate in professional development and enhance personal growth. The views expressed by the presenters are not necessarily the views of AMATYC, and if they talk about commercial products, they're not endorsed by AMATYC, just the presenters. This webinar is sponsored by the Lift Institute at Muskegon Community College. We're providing the technology for this, and if you have ideas about future webinar programs, feel free to contact me. You will have my email address because I sent you the details to how to log in. So I'm going to go ahead and close this and switch to the presenter slides. So give me a second here and then we'll let them get started. All right, I'm turning it over to whichever one of you is going first.
There. Hi everybody, this is Marianne. I'd like to welcome you to our webinar, our first webinar, Teaching Developmental Mathematics. It's not just about the content. We'd like to take a minute to introduce ourselves. Here's Lynn. And here's me, Marianne. We teach at Santa Ana College in Southern California, and we've both been concentrating on teaching developmental math classes for many years now. We've been working on a number of projects together, and you'll be hearing about some of them here in this webinar. So first thing, we'd like to know what you teach. What developmental math classes do you teach? And I think this is the cue for a poll to come in. Okay, I can't add all those numbers that fast, but it looks like a lot of people have answered, and I don't see the bars changing, so it looks like we have a fairly even distribution of all those classes from arithmetic, pre-algebra, more in beginning algebra than anything else, but quite a few in all of these 4 classes, and one person has added geometry. Okay, so we hope you find it useful. Our plan for today is to help you engage in the creative process. We want you to start thinking creatively and look at your role as a developmental math teacher in a different way, to know that you can make a difference in how you teach your classes and how your students learn developmental mathematics. We'd like to share with you what we do in our pre-algebra course. We'd like all together to brainstorm a few ideas and to commit to making a change. So first of all, we'd like to get a little more feedback from you. So to just type into the chat window, what comes into your mind? What inhibits student success in your classroom? Lack of attendance, lack of preparation, too much content, time management, learning to be a student as well as the math, lack of motivation, underprepared, personal challenges outside of class, lack of self-confidence, too many other obligations, math phobia, poor preparation. I'm just reading through a few of them as quickly as I can as they scroll by. Lack of time, old learning habits, learning skills, study skills, gaps from prior learning, self-identification, repeat offenders, not seeking additional help, lack of practice, fear of mathematics, or overconfident. Okay, I was reading as fast as I could. Is there anybody that said something in there that I didn't read that you really would like to get out there? So you have another chance to type something in. Okay, I'm going to turn this over to Lynn now. I'm checking off, and Lynn, pick up the mic then.
Hi, I'm Lynn, and now that we've heard all those, we can kind of see that it's very typical that our classes are very much the same, that we have a lot of issues with study skills, fears, and interference from outside of school. So as a developmental math teacher, we can all sit around and grumble and complain and talk about how bad the students are, or we can do something about it. and Marianne and I feel that the proactive approach is a much better approach, and that developmental math classes are not just about the content. Not only should we do it because we feel we should, but our professional organizations charge us to do something, to take action. Of course, AMATYC, you're part of that. We're in California, and there's a big developmental movement called the California Basic Skills Initiative, the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics, and then, of course, the AMATYC Developmental Math Committee. In Beyond Crossroads, here's some places where they mention what we should do. We should embrace change, we should develop student study skills, and we should use multiple instructional strategies. We will be able to give you a copy of this presentation later, so if we're going to go through some of it pretty quickly, and if you want to read these more carefully, it will be available. Okay, the California Basic Skills Initiative also focuses on self-directed learning. They want us to develop study skills, they want us to use manipulatives, and to put attention on reading and literacy right in the subject area. The National Council of Teachers of Mathematics has similar charges. Boy, I sound weird in this thing. The Developmental Math Committee, of course, has been spending a lot of time on the course redesign, and they want us to include motivation, support, student efficacy strategies, instructional strategies that support learning, and then we want our developmental classes to empower students. But for many of us, we just can't do a redesign, at least not a complete one, so what can we do? Well, at Santa Ana College, we've done a few things, and that's what we're going to talk about. Santa Ana College is a large urban two-year community college in California. We're about 5 miles from Disneyland, so most people know where that is. Our pre-algebra course is a semester bridge between basic math and elementary algebra. And the course was created to meet the needs of our students. And we did this gradually. Sometimes people think we had this grand plan and we took it step by step, but it wasn't like that. It was just we worked in our classroom, we saw what our students needed, and then we just tried some things. But this model does align with all the professional groups. Okay, so at Santa Ana College, there's really 4 parts to what we do in our pre-algebra course. We also do some of these in our basic math and our elementary algebra. It's just not quite as integrated. So we're going to talk about the 4 parts today. Strategies for success, which is where we integrate study skills throughout the course. Manipulative mathematics is where we actually integrate manipulative activities into the course. And then links to literacy, we use children's literature to help teach math content. And then classroom assessment techniques is a method that helps us get immediate feedback from our students. The strategies for success, in each of these, we identify a problem with our students or our class, and then we try to figure out what we can do to help it. So for strategies for success, the problem is that students' poor study skills often hinder their success. It's hard to teach the math sometimes because their study skills are so poor. So what we did is we created 32 worksheets that encourage awareness of effective study skills, active student engagement. We want the students to take personal responsibility, and then we want constant self-reflection. So the worksheets aren't optional, they're an integral part of our course. They're very easy for the students to do. They take little class time because we don't have class time, and they provide value from time spent. our students are too busy to give them something that they are going to spend time on that isn't valuable. But also we want our teachers to be able to use them confidently and be easy to grade. So some of the topics that we've included are things about goal setting, organization, successful student behavior, homework skills, test preparation, and math anxiety. So those are kind of the topics that it's covered. Here's one of them, a piece of one of them. It's very different doing this on a webinar and actually not being able to pass these out to you, but here's one of them that's on time and ready to go. This is just a piece of it. We want the students to think of things themselves. We want them to come up with their ideas and to figure out how they're going to change what they do. Most of the textbooks have a little piece on study skills, but it's a paragraph and it's like blah, 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 blah. And the students either don't read it or they think it's their mother yelling at them saying, you should do this, you should do that. So we have these worksheets that we feel is a little more engaging and self-reflective. So this one, on time and ready to go, my class meets on from what time to what time. And then to be in class on time regularly, I need to. Sometimes we find that our students don't actually think backwards. You know, if I have to be in class by 8, I need to get on this bus, or I need to get out of bed at this time, or whatever. So they have to think it through there. And then how do I need to adjust my schedule to get to class on time? And what do I need to bring to class? And what do I need to be sure do I have these tools every day in class? In order to be ready for the next section of the class, what do I need to do? So they have to actually fill in the blanks. This is kind of condensed into this PowerPoint, but yes, they write each of these, and I'm sorry, I looked at the chat in the middle of my thoughts, sorry. In order to be ready for the next session, what do I need to do? How do I get help with the course? So it's very self-reflective in figuring out what they need to do for them. The first few that they use are kind of a shock to them, that they have to actually think it through. That they get used to it after they've done a couple. As far as how do we do this, implementation, the worksheets, we have worksheets available in print that we use in our classroom. We have an electronic online assessment service, kind of like SurveyMonkey, that's available, that we have them there as well, so the students can figure them out online. If we had more time today, we'd love to show you how that works. It's pretty cool how it sorts the answers and so forth. But the print one work well as well. We also spend a lot of time training and supporting other teachers. We have workshops and professional learning communities. For example, this last spring I had a group of faculty, most of which were part-timers, and we spent the semester having about 4 meetings and talking about how to implement them and use that. Again, we really want this to be easy for the teachers. We've designed them so that they do not take any class time and they don't require a lot of grading, and so that's really important. Before I get to that one, I want to stress again that for students, when we design these, we design them to be valuable, useful, and something that they're going to get something out of just by doing it. So it's all in the design plan of how they're created that makes all of that work. As far as the teacher goes, we know you don't have any class time. We know we have so much content to cover, but yet we felt we couldn't ignore study skills. And so we've integrated into the course and that. At this point, I'll say, are there any quick questions before we move on here? All right, looks like we're okay for the moment. So let's go on, and we're going to ask you a question now. If you were thinking of integrating these, and that seemed like such a brief introduction of how to do that, but what support will you need to feel confident to begin integrating strategies for success into your class? Yes, okay, so the first question, do you take consideration the timing of the worksheets? Yes, we have a plan of when they should be used during the semester, Each of the worksheets has a teacher page that goes with it that suggests the best timing. The questions, there are not any math questions on the worksheets. There are just study skills. For test prep, we have a 5-worksheet suite of worksheets that cover test taking, preparing for the test, during the test, after the test, analyzing the test, so all of that. The next question, if no class time is used, how do you address study skills? Okay, I won't say there's absolutely no study time used, but most of the worksheets are designed to be done as homework or perhaps in a group. For example, the very first day I used the one called Syllabus Search. So while I'm taking attendance and dealing with ads and so forth, I give them the worksheet on the syllabus search and let them work in groups. This lets them meet other people, and that time that's kind of wasted while I'm taking roll and the wait list and all of that is being used. But most of the rest we give them in class, at the end of class, or right before the break, or as homework. The students work on them and bring them back, and then we can address certain issues in there. We will definitely be able to send you all of the worksheets so that you can see the different topics. Let's see. Anything, Marianne, do you see? Okay, so it talks about grading. I do it as a homework grade, and each of my homework assignments is 10 points. I give them 10 if it's completed, and 0 if it's not. If they don't finish it, I give it back and ask them to finish it. Marianne's homework thing goes on 2 points. She gives 2 points if you've done it completely, 1 if you haven't, 0 if it isn't. So it's very, very flexible. It can be whatever you think is necessary and how that works with the practices of your school. But both of us do count this into the homework grade. It's not optional, it is part of the homework. We use it not only in pre-algebra, but we use it in basic math and elementary algebra and our intermediate algebra. And there are some teachers that have used these in like statistics, especially the stuff about test analysis. And so I think I've answered most of the question. Okay, so I didn't see too much on what support you would need to feel confident. I hope that if you do have questions on that or anything we can do to help you, that you would contact us. Okay. All right. So our next topic is on manipulative mathematics. And the problem there was that students they lacked conceptual understanding. They just had things memorized, like a negative and a negative is a positive. You know, so they tell me -3 and -5 is +8, because we all know a negative and a negative is a positive. So they don't really have any understanding why, and they really don't have a foundation to build on. Of course, many of these students don't have any confidence in their ability to do math, and so they find this very difficult. So Marianne and I each have 3 kids, and we were volunteering in our kids' classrooms many years ago. And of course, when the teachers hear that you're a math teacher, they want you to help with the math. And so they were asking us to teach the manipulatives and help with the manipulatives in the kids' classrooms. And we saw how wonderful they were and what they did, and we said, well, why can't we use those in college classes? And so we spent many years creating activities using manipulatives. And manipulatives can be any concrete objects to make abstract concepts real. And it was really surprising how many aha moments we had among our students. Every time I say that one, I think of this one student who looked like a student who wasn't really thrilled about being there in math. He kind of sulked in the back of the room. And the day that I brought fraction tiles to class, he waited after class till the whole class was gone, and he kept saying, no, I'll wait till everybody's gone. And then he came up and he said, can I have a picture of this? And he took out a cell phone and took a picture of the fraction tiles and said, I've never understood fractions before today. And so that little episode was what really made me believe that this is really working for many, many students. So the manipulative topics that we covered and the manipulatives we use are fraction tiles and fraction circles to help with fractions such as equivalent fractions, the LCDs, and the operations. The two-color counters, which we use to teach sign numbers, the envelopes and counters to do solving equations, and then the plastic money to do mixture problems. Geoboards is one of my favorites as well to teach slope. Okay, so how did we do this? How did we get this done? Well, we got some grants to buy manipulatives little by little. Before we did that, like when we used the two-color counters, we went to the grocery store and bought white beans and red beans and used those. So sometimes we did it with just things we have laying around, you know, cardboard or whatever. But eventually, little by little, we got manipulatives to use them. We wrote curriculum to integrate them into the course. And then we also, again, have worksheets to help the teachers learn how to do it and to give them confidence that they can do it. We made manipulatives available in our classrooms. Again, for some of the part-timers, that was a big thing. If they weren't right in the classroom, they weren't going to chase them down. And then we use the worksheet activities in the class. And that time spent is usually replaced as part of a lecture because the development of the concepts using the manipulatives takes the place of the lecture. We also had workshops and meetings and so forth to help and train and support any teacher who was interested. Any questions that we need to do this, to talk about this? Any questions about this? Yes, we have all the worksheets for this and we're more than happy to share them with you. Also, we're working right now on getting these online as virtual manipulatives through Camtasia, and we're developing those. We've got a few now, but we're getting more. I've never had a student complain about using the manipulatives in terms of feeling like a child. That's never been an issue. In fact, I've found them where they want to go out and buy them. I know it seems like, well, they came from the elementary school. That doesn't mean it doesn't work in the college. We just use it as something to help us, and they really, really get into it. So I encourage you to try it. On both of these topics, strategies for success and manipulative mathematics, Marianne and I say don't try to integrate everything all at once. Take it a little at a time. Like strategies for success, maybe do 3, 4 in a semester the first time until you feel confident. With manipulatives, I always said try 1 per unit, like 1 on whole numbers, 1 on fractions, 1 on decimals, whatever, until you got confident. And now when I teach like basic math, I have 1 in every class session, just about. Pre-algebra, not quite as many, but definitely many. So we do it as you feel comfortable. And none of us have been trained in this, and so of course we don't feel as confident. But when you see what it does for your class, you're going to gain your confidence as you try a few, and so I encourage you to do that. Let's see, our classes are, we have 1 hour and 50-minute classes. Yes, we'd be glad to do another one on manipulatives. Okay, so I think we answered most of the... Yes, I do find the manipulative skills translate to paper and pencil skills, especially the one that I see the most of, which is kind of like proof to me, is using the 2-color counters for teaching sign numbers. And besides using the counters, I make the students draw circles, open circles and closed circles, and so they first move it with their hands with the manipulatives, and then they draw it on their papers. And I've seen students even use, every semester I usually have like only 1 person who still uses those little circles on the final, but they still have that model in their mind, they still can use it. But the difference between teaching, especially subtracting sign numbers with the manipulatives and without, has been phenomenal. I can honestly say that almost everybody in the class gets sign numbers once they've done this. Marianne saying explain them a little. yeah, when we do the manipulatives, that's kind of like our introduction, and then we fold that in and work right on towards the regular, doing some examples, paper and pencil. And when we give tests and assess them, everything is moving along just fine. So I guess that's good. So let's move on here to saying, what is your biggest concern about using manipulatives in the classroom? We talked a little bit about concern about embarrassing the students, which has not been an issue.
Oh, Lynn, I think I accidentally just turned your microphone off trying to get mine to work. Can you turn it back on, please?
Okay, mine's back on. Okay, time constraints. There really isn't, it doesn't really take that much longer. If I'm going to teach how to do slope, I have to talk about it. But if I give them a geoboard and show them how to make a line on a geoboard and count the rise and run there, whether I do it on the board or I do it on the geoboard, I'm still taking some time for lecture. But when I do it with the geoboard, they're doing it with me. Their hands are involved. They see it, they move it, they do it, and I would never teach slope without it again. Finding the time to make a class set, it really doesn't take that long. Also, you can Xerox things and let the students make their own. Like I said, money, we use beans from the grocery store, which didn't cost that much. So being really creative. If you have any questions, we can spend more time on this, with you personally, give you some ideas, but I think we're going to move on. So the next one is links to literacy, and that's I'm going to turn over to Mary Ann.
Okay, am I in? I think. So I'm assuming everyone can hear me. Okay, good. So the next part of our pre-algebra course is a project we developed to address the problem that many of our students have very weak math foundations and they have poor math vocabulary. And as Lynn mentioned earlier, we each have 3 children. Now they're all grown, but as the kids were growing up, we of course read them math-themed books. I would go to Barnes & Noble and find some interesting books like the 3-Hat Day or something and buy them and take them home. So we said, why not introduce these books to our students? So we created assignments that would connect children's books to the course content. We could see in some of the books that we had used with our kids where this would fit into the pre-algebra content. The children's books give students an alternate and a usually very simplified view of a particular math topic. So it's something different than they would see in the textbook, but it still covers the same idea. They help to fill in holes in the student's background because we realized that many of our students have very spotty math history. They did not go completely through a math curriculum from kindergarten through grade 12 in the same school district to have it all laid out in order. They went from here to there, big absences, moving around, so there were a lot of holes. We also have, at our school in Southern California, and we know this is the case in many, many places across the country, a lot of students who are English language learners. And so we do links to literacy to help them communicate more in English and help increase their literacy, their reading and their writing literacy. And also, as you'll see some of the assignments, what we do, the links to literacy empower the students as teachers because we ask them to read the books to a child and then do an activity with the child. So what are these activities? We wrote worksheets. So they're again worksheets that lead students through activities to develop math concepts. And the worksheets follow a format a pretty consistent format, where the first question on the worksheet is to read the book. So read a math-themed children's book, and we name them. We tell them which ones to do. After they read the book, they answer several questions about it, and the questions start from a very simple level of just retell the story to a little bit more complicated. Apply the concepts to life. What did you think of this? How does this help a child learn? The last activity, the last question for many of the worksheets is read this book to a child and do an activity together, and then write about the child's comment and reactions. I have to say here too, we have some of the worksheets, some of the books that do not involve reading to children, so that if we have students that have no little kids available in their lives, they can do the assignments without having to find random children around. So here's an excerpt from one of our assignments. This is about the children's book called The Doorbell Rang. And The Doorbell Rang, it's a book that's about some children, brother and sister, sharing 4 cookies, and then the doorbell rings and more. Oh no, it's not 4 cookies. The children start sharing 12 cookies, I'm sorry, and 2 children, and then the doorbell rings, and so there's 4 children and 6 children and 12 children. So how are they going to split up the cookies? How are they going to share them? And we found that this is an excellent activity to assess if our students understand fractions. And so these are the type of questions we ask them. So first we start, what's the story about? And then they tell us a little bit about the story. So then at one part, the cookies will be shared among 4 children. Write this as a fraction and explain what the numerator and denominator represent. So they may write 12 over 4, 12 is cookies, 4 is children, or 4 over 12, 4 is children, 12 is cookies, and as long as they explain, it's okay. What is the largest number of children who could share without having to break cookies? They usually see that means 12 cookies. And then we ask them, what if there were 18 children? How could they share the 12 cookies evenly? All the times we've been using this is the most amazing question, because some of our students get it, and some just don't. They just cannot conceptualize of fractions. They will suddenly flip it. And so if there were 18 children and 12 cookies, they may divide it and say each child will get 1.5 cookies. And we know that doesn't make sense. We see their explanations, that ... we want them to explain in words or pictures or diagrams so that we see what their thinking is. I have to say at this point that we do collect the assignments and then write on them, so we'll feed it back to the students. No, it can't be 1.5 cookies each, because you only had 12 cookies, and now this means you have 27. Okay, and you can see the last activity, what we have them do something with a young child of 12 objects, and here we don't have them do the 18, but what if there were 24? And interestingly, most of the kids can divide it in half, but the students can't divide into 2/3, many of them. What are the effects of these activities? They empower the students by placing them in the role of the teacher to explain this. Read the story to a child. Explain it to them. They increase their literacy skills. They provide evidence that math concepts are understandable, and that kind of, I'm seeing what's going on in the chat window. The students aren't offended. In fact, the opposite. They see that this stuff is understandable by little kids. This book was written for 8-year-olds, and it's the concept that we're learning in pre-algebra. So they accept that, and we've had many comments of students that even want to buy books similar to those. They wish they had them when they were children. Our students who are parents will ask where they can find books like these to get them for their own kids. And that's part of our ultimate goal, is to prepare the next generation of students so they know about reading children's books and have their foundation firmly in place when they get to our college classes. Here's the list of topics of books that we found as they correspond to our pre-algebra course: factoring, fractions, equations, area perimeter, exponents, word problems, decimals, point plotting. How do we do these in class? We identified the books, and we found them in a variety of places. NCTM has websites that show, and I see Maria put something, oh, that was for manipulatives, but NCTM has websites of children's math literature. Our California Department of Education, the Math Framework, has books, so I'm sure other states do as well. And we had some of our favorites from when our kids were little, and we saw some just going out and browsing at bookstores. So we identified books, we wrote the curriculum, we used grants to buy books, and little by little was the key. If the library ever put out an email towards the end of the year that said, we have $600 left, does anybody want to buy any books? Well, children's books don't cost very much, so we could come out mighty close to $600 and buy a lot of books for that. We trained teachers. We made sure that the teachers in our developmental math classes know about this project and know how to use them. How do we use them in our class? We do not have students in reading circles in our math classes. We don't have time. This is entirely done outside of class. It's a homework assignment. And in fact, in my class, out of the 18 or so books that we have, I have students choose to do just four assignments through the class, 2 around the first half of the class, 2 at the second half of the class. So they have some options about which ones they want to use. Other teachers use them as group work outside of class and as in-class presentations. I've also, at different terms, used them as extra credit opportunities. So question to you all, how do you feel about the possibility of incorporating links to literacy activities into your classes? So now I'm going to look at the chat window and see what comes up there. Oh, so far I can just say I'm glad. Thanks for saying all this. Good, and I know, Lynn, you've been addressing some of the questions that came up earlier. I can see that. Okay, writing across the curriculum does relate to this very much. And I saw something, it's also good, it can move into the Math for Elementary School Teachers class, and also I've used these in Math for Liberal Arts students as one of a set of options of projects to do. What about our students with low reading skills? The books we use are really, really, really elementary reading. Okay, so I think we'll put up the resources later on. Using children's books makes me a bit nervous, Maria. Yeah, I have to say it kind of did us too at the beginning, but so you just try it once and see that I don't know, for me, all it takes is a couple of students at the first time I try something to act like this is a great idea, and I run with it then. Okay, the books do help with math vocabulary. They do. The area and perimeter, there's a book I could think of right off, Spaghetti and Meatballs for All, that's talking about area and perimeters, and other books about the sums, about equations. We have, exponents with grains of rice, the Tower of Hanoi. So there are lots of ways, and some, if it's not explicit, if it's not explicit, we may bring up the vocabulary in words, so in part of the assignment. Okay, I think we'll go on to the next slide. The next activity that we do is classroom assessment techniques. And classroom assessment techniques have been around for quite a while, but they're good. They're useful. I have been using them for many years, and it's something that I just automatically bring to class with me. I'm ready to do classroom assessment techniques at any time because they assess the problem. They help with the problem of it's hard for us to know the needs of our students. We may think we're good at looking at student faces and reading and knowing what they need, but until you see it written down, it's hard to know what everybody needs. What are classroom assessment techniques? These, if you've heard of them and you've heard of the names Pat Cross and Tom Angelo, they developed or formalized classroom assessment techniques back around 1990. So they have been around for a while, but again, they are invaluable. in terms of one of the tools of a classroom teacher. What are the principles? Well, the main tool is 3x5 cards. They are anonymous, so that the purpose of classroom assessment techniques is to get the temperature of the class as a whole and not to assess individual student learning. So on a 3x5 card, the student will write a response to a question. The teacher collects, sorts the responses, looks at them, gets instant feedback, knows what the students know what they don't know, in a way that is not threatening to the students because they are not graded. The cards are anonymous. So, Pat Cross of OU. Pat Cross has been at Berkeley and at Harvard, and I don't know where else, so possibly. Anyway, students do not feel threatened by these because they're not graded. These are cheaper than clickers. So what are useful? Pat Cross and Tom Angelo put out a book and then a second edition of the book of about 200 pages of classroom assessment techniques. So I'm just giving you here the 4 most useful classroom assessment techniques in a developmental math class. And so these 4 that I really think are the best are, the first is a background knowledge probe. And that's where you find out, what do students already know before you start teaching something. So for instance, in a say intermediate algebra class, when I'm starting the lesson on slope, instead of just starting to lecture about slope, I may pass out cards, I'll get to that later, but I may ask students to write down 3 things they know about slope before I do anything. And then I collect them and go through them, and I know that students have a pretty good idea of slope, or I know where I have to start. That sort of tells me where the class is. In my pre-algebra class, I always do that when I start decimal arithmetic. So I put up 4 problems on the board, add, subtract, multiply, and divide with decimal numbers. I have them do the problems on a card anonymously, collect them, and then I just summarize how many did this correct, how many didn't. So then the class sees very clearly. Some semesters we can jump right in on adding and subtracting and skip the multiplying. Some semesters we have to go through everything very carefully. Clearest and muddiest. This is where you ask students to say, what is the clearest point of this lesson? What is the muddiest point of this lesson? I'd like to do this when I'm reviewing for a test. In the class before a test, sometimes I don't ask them the clearest. I just say, we just finished these 2 chapters. What is the muddiest point to you? What makes the least sense, so that I know what we need to review? And I promise them that I will not use those just to make up the test. Something that doesn't have a name in the Cross-Angelo book, but I've made up, is just called Do This Problem. I want to see whether students can do this or not. So I'll put a problem on the board, I'll say take out a card and do it. And then I'll collect and I'll know how many can do it, how many couldn't, what types of errors they make. Something else I've had to do in class sometimes is fess up. You've all been there, I'm sure. When you're in the class, you've done a hard lesson the day before, you say, are there any questions on the homework? And nobody has questions. So you know they haven't done the homework. So then I might say, take out a card, okay, write the number of the last section that you did the homework in. So I'm talking about section 7.5. I collect cards and I see that the class students are in a smattering of sections in chapter 6. We need to talk about this. I need to tell them how important it is to stay on task, to stay on time. But again, I know where they are and it makes them accountable. How do we use these? What's the implementation? We have trained teachers. We've run workshops, professional development workshops on how to use classroom assessment techniques. We've run those many, many times at the beginning of the semester, during the semester. Now, students bring cards to class. I've found that now I write on my syllabus when I list the required materials, such as a textbook and a notebook and stuff. I also say students need to have a pack of 3x5 cards. And I say they need to bring about half a dozen with them to class every day, so that now I don't have to take time to pass out cards. I just say, take out a card and answer this question. because the use may be planned or it may be spontaneous. I always tell teachers when they start to do these to plan their use, to write down the specific question you want to ask and be ready at a certain time to ask it. But as it becomes part of your toolbox, then you just find that there's a time in class you have to know, and that's the spontaneous use. Okay, do I ever have students use all 6 in class ever at once when I say bring about half a dozen? No, of course not. At most, I may ask once or possibly twice during the same class period, but 6 will cover the students next to them who forgot. Okay, so how did we do this, Lynn? I think this is your cue, right?
Yes.
Okay, I'm off.
Okay, so the question is, well, how did we do all this? And again, as I said earlier, it wasn't that we had a grand plan. It's just as we taught our classes, we saw that things needed to change, that they weren't going to be successful if different things didn't change. So little by little, we changed it. We took one step at a time. We tried something. Some things worked, some things didn't. We were very cautious about using our class time, but we tried it, and that's what we encourage you to do, is to just look at your class and say, I don't like how this is going. What can I do to create something or change something or do something to change that? It's been kind of interesting to see how the little things we've done have affected change among our colleagues. It's kind of become a thing now that, you know, these things are totally integrated in the course for the whole department. It's spreading, it's kind of rippling, especially the strategies for success recently. And so, again, it's one of those things. One small little change can end up being a big change. So now we're at the point that, you know, same thing. If you're thinking now just ending up your semester and you're looking forward to the fall, what's one thing that you would like to address? And I'd like you to take a minute here to put that in the chat as for yourself. What's one thing that you would like to address as you head to the fall? Okay, retention, the classroom assessment techniques, literacy, finding small grants, retention, study skills. The classes that we've used, the strategies for success study skills, we don't have a quantitative thing, but I can tell you that those classes, the retention is way better. It empowers them, it gives them a building of confidence, and they believe there's some hope, and we didn't have much time to show you the different ones and how it builds, but if you do those during a semester, the change in the student attitude is actually pretty amazing. And the retention numbers in my classroom are really good. They don't all pass, but they stay. And so yes, that's one thing. So we've got, some people are listing the things they'd like to try. Use the index card, positive attitude, use the cards, reading the math book. The attendance, there's a lot of that addressed in the study skills as well. And so we're working on that with those as well. Still not perfect. Okay. Anybody have any thoughts about what of their own personal attitudinal barriers might limit their success? Anything you're concerned? We talked a little bit about people worrying about, you know, giving children's books to adults or using manipulatives with adults. Those might be some attitudinal barriers. Again, I have found it's how I present it. If I say, here's something that I think is going to help you understand it, just stick with me for one day. I only ask that you do these one day and show them with a positive attitude in that. I've really had almost zero problems with that. So I encourage you to give it a try. Okay, yeah, there are sometimes people don't want to try something different, but if we each try something and see how it works and then add to our repertoire, like I said, little changes here and there add up to big changes. Again, here we wanted you to sit down and say to yourself personally, as a result of this session, I commit to trying this new idea. Because if we make that commitment, it's more likely to happen. And Marianne and I also say that we are here as a resource. I'm going to go right to the last slide here that tells you how to do this, how to contact us. You can get a copy of the PowerPoint. You can get more information on strategies for success, manipulatives, and links to literacy. And the email address is there for both of us. So I think that that's it as far as what we wanted to present. If you have any questions.
I'm going to go ahead and jump in here real quick. And first, I want to thank Lynn and Marianne for giving the presentation today. We should all give them a little round of applause with our little applause button. If you have questions, please continue to type them into the chat window. I've put up a little link real quick for you to put in your email address and name if you want Lynn and Marianne to send you materials, because they said so many times, we can send you these, we can send you these, we can send you these, rather than all of you emailing them separately. It would be easier if I just give them a list of email addresses. So if you follow that little bit.ly link, I put up a quick Google form for you to do that. I also want to go back to the kind of the final slides here. Whoops, I think I just put up the wrong one. Nope, maybe not. Because I want to make sure that I give you the link for the evaluation. So give me a second here while this loads.
I could probably add one thing to your comment there also, Maria.
Yeah.
You asked if the reason we didn't have examples. Well, we have one example of each one in there because of the time constraints. And so we're more than happy to show more. I mean, we've done whole workshops on each of these topics, so there just wasn't time. It is true that the strategies for success will be published in for the spring semester to be packaged with any Pearson book for a real nominal fee, like $2.50 or $3. So it's a small commercial there, but we're happy to give them to people through the website.
Okay. Some of you are not AMATYC members, and if you aren't and you'd like to join AMATYC, I just put the link in there. I also want to remind people that we do have a Facebook page, and even if you're not a member of AMATYC, this is a great way to know what webinars are coming up and see links about events. So I'll put that in the window as well. You can incidentally view that page without being a member of Facebook, so if you just want to go and see what's up, you can go look at it without that. And then our past AMATYC webinars can be found very quickly by going to this bit.ly link. AMATYC webinars. And it usually takes us a week or two to get through the process of uploading a webinar to that, so be a little bit patient with that. And finally, I have a little evaluation. I would love it if you would just take 2 minutes and fill it out. I'll put it up here in the window. AMATYC Webinar 07. And also, if you need email confirmation that you participated in today's webinar, there's a little optional section at the very bottom of that evaluation now to give your email address, so I can just send those out in a batch instead of one by one. Anyways, if there are any additional questions, please just continue to type them. I think we're just about out of time for today. It's a lot of links right there at the end. And hopefully you're all quiet now because you're dutifully filling out our evaluation. Yeah, Bonnie, there's a place in the evaluation to leave suggestions for future webinars, so if you could leave your suggestions there, that'd be great. There was an evaluation for the last webinar, but I think it's closed now. The survey is at that link that says AMATYC Webinar 07. And just as a preview, the announcement should be going out any day now for the next webinar, which will actually be on calculus manipulatives, and it has a special 3D feature in it. So hopefully that'll go out maybe today or tomorrow, but that one's not till the end of June. So All right, I'm going to go ahead and turn off the recording for this webinar.